One, two, three, action. Thank you, everyone. So, welcome to Each One Teach One, which is a series that I started in maybe 2 years ago, or maybe three, maybe around the pandemic. Well, wait, the pandemic was like 5 years ago now.
5 years ago.
That's
What
crazy.
is time?
What is time? So, Each One Teach One is a segment, a series that we're creating that really just focuses on highlighting women executives, and really showing the journey of the career, right? Because I think a lot of times what we do is we see the highlight reel of all the things that involve a career. But what I really wanted to take the time out to do is in, interview women that have been along this journey for some time, so that has the experience, right? And can really teach us about the journey, teach us about the pivots, teach us about the ups and downs of it all. And who better to start with than one of my closest friends, Regina Dowdell, who has been in digital content strategy, marketing strategy for some time now. And I'm going to definitely let her talk through all of the things that she has been throughout throughout the journey of her career, and all of the moments, like all of the career highlights, just things that she has experienced throughout this career. So welcome, Regina. Thank you for being
Thank you. That was a good intro. I feel
Oh, thank
special.
you. You are special.
Thank you.
Um, so as I mentioned, Regina, this is really, and the goal is to be like very laid back, right? I don't want any
Have you
like
met me? Have you met me? Am I any other way? I don't think so.
super laid back, and like we were talking about before, like no, it doesn't even need to be rehearsed. Like I want us to really get into the nitty gritty of what
Got you.
this journey has been like, right? So if you could tell us a little bit of just where your career started into what it is today.
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you for having me. So my career started fresh out of college at Girl Scouts of the USA,
I
which is
remember.
so funny. My favorite story to tell while I was working there is that I got kicked out of Girl Scouts when I was a kid. And I was like, full circle, I'm back. But with my marketing degree from Howard, my goal was to make my way into marketing somehow at Girl Scouts. There weren't any roles available. I took on like this temp admin role, and then they hired their first ever chief marketing officer, Laurel Ritchie, and immediately she was like, "This girl needs to be on my team," and I was like, "I like you." And so stayed at Girl Scouts for a while, and then just kind of wanted to explore what marketing looked like outside of the nonprofit world and just in different areas. So I was a marketing manager at a couple of different employment firms. That was terrible. And then I did some field marketing. I did strictly content marketing for a PR services firm. And so just kind of moved around to get an idea of what marketing can look like from all sides. What are the different ways that you can market? But through this journey, I kept quitting. You know that. My mom called me a serial job quitter. I gave her a heart attack every single time. Sometimes I had stuff lined up, most of the time I didn't. But I was just very clear that if an environment wasn't for me, then
Mhm.
I was leaving.
Right.
I'll figure it out. I just feel I'm one of those people where I'm gonna go ahead and jump out the window. I have this very, very strong faith that I'm not gonna hit the ground, and I haven't yet, knock on whatever we got over here.
Mhm.
But I kept quitting all these jobs. And finally, I was like, you know what? I can do this myself.
Mhm.
So with the last full-time job I had, I started just helping friends. Luckily, I have a lot of very entrepreneurial friends. They knew that marketing was my bag, and they were like, all right, we need help here, we need help there. So I was kind of doing it on the side, and I ultimately felt like corporate wasn't for me. Namely the following other people's rules. I have a little problem with that. But the way that people were working, the way that they were serving communities that I cared about, I just saw these really large gaps there and felt like I could fill that gap. And so I launched Red Perspective. My initials are Red, and it is a boutique agency that really does aim to support Black women in business, whether it's small business or medium size, and you're ready to kind of go to that next level, or individual Black women who need to up and bolster their personal profile. I know one of my longtime clients, I've been with her for 8 years. We started because she was about to write a book and had no social media presence. So
Mm-hmm.
she was like, I signed the book deal, help people know who I am. And we've been on this journey. Second book just came out last month. We've been like doing the thing for almost a decade, but really making sure that I provided a service my way, which is very unique, but to people who felt like they could be seen, heard, understood, so we could really galvanize the target audience that they wanted. They felt comfortable and trusted what I could do with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I said never corporate, and then I got a DM from a LinkedIn recruiter, and she was sent me this job description. It looked sales oriented. I said, my sister, I don't do sales. You have the wrong person. And she wouldn't get out my inbox. So finally I read it. We hopped on the phone, and it was very similar to what I do with my clients, just with different audiences.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to consulting with Red Perspective, I'm also a senior content consultant at LinkedIn. And basically, I go into these very large companies who spend a lot of money on LinkedIn marketing and tell them how they can optimize their content, how they can improve their perception and presence on the platform. And currently, I cover financial services for all of the US and every business vertical you can think of that markets on LinkedIn in Canada. So I zip back and forth to Toronto very often, and I am constantly looking at content, thinking about ways that content can be optimized, but really making sure that I'm keeping authenticity and some sort of positive impact at the heart of it.
Amazing. That's amazing. I'm actually learning more about what you do. We're having this conversation.
Have you ever seen, there's a TikTok of people that are like, one girl put together a Friday night party, and it really was all of the friends. There was food, there was drinks, and
Yeah.
everybody came with a presentation talking about what they do. Because they were like, I have
So
no idea what my friends
we
do.
need to organize that.
Right.
I
No,
know.
because I have no idea what y'all do. It's crazy.
So, okay. So that was a lot, right?
A
And
lot.
it's amazing. But I also want to unpack some of those things because what I
Mhm.
realize is that we hear about these titles, we hear about marketing, we hear about senior content solutions, but really understanding what it is, because I think what happens is a lot of people don't realize they would be great for a job, or they
Right.
may not love a job just based off of what it entails, right? And marketing is such a broad term. Um,
100.
I would love to understand from your perspective, like, what does marketing mean to you? Like, what's the first entry point when you're assessing how you begin with a client from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was just putting together a form for a marketing audit for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at the questions I was asking them. So it completely aligns with this. The first thing that I want to know from people is, how do you want to be seen?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, how do you want you as a person, if I'm working with an individual, your brand, what do you want people to know and understand? And most importantly, for me, what I think is really important is, how do you want people to feel
Right.
when
That's
they come
right.
in contact with your brand, right? Because they could be like, oh, yeah, this person is good at this,
Mm-hmm.
but is it this person understands me?
Mm-hmm.
And the product or solution or offering or whatever can actually help me? Is there a connection? Um, and so, like, we've done research at LinkedIn that shows that when people have an emotional connection to a brand, they're willing to pay 6 times premium pricing for whatever it is that you're offering. So that's the first thing. What do you want people to feel? And then I look at what they've created, how they're marketing themselves, etc. And it's like, we may have some gaps to close. So that's what it is for me. It's like, what do you want? How do you want people to see you? How do you want people to feel you? And then let's talk about how we can do that. What's the strategy that we can put together? And again, like I said before, keeping authenticity and some sort of positive impact at like the base of it all, but
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you are coming across the way that you want to your target demographic.
That makes complete sense. I
Yep.
always say with marketing, right, it's about amplifying your vision versus
100%.
giving you the vision, right?
Yep.
if you have to give it, is it really, really authentic to you? And where do we start, right? Is
Yeah.
the
And I
next
can't work with inauthenticity,
right,
which is another reason why I had to get out of corporate. And I was like, oh, we're not the same. I'm
right?
gonna go now. I'll excuse myself.
Yes. And that emotional connection is important. So how do you create that if it's
If
not
it's not real.
real? Yes.
Correct.
I 100% agree with you. I didn't know about that metric of like customers being willing to pay 6 times
Six
more.
times the premium.
That makes
And when you think of emotion, right, it could be anything. It
that,
could be you made them laugh. It could
mhm,
be you were relatable. It could be you dug into something nostalgic and it brought them up. It could be aspirational. Like
right,
there are so many emotions that you can tap into. Which one is
right.
authentic to your brand or you as an individual? How are you integrating that into your marketing strategy to get that result?
Mm-hmm. And then when you come up with like at least when the first part is done, right? And they agree to whatever what the target audience is,
Yeah.
what how you summarize what you feel like their vision is, what is then the next step with the client or with the brand, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I'm assessing your comfort level because
Okay.
we can go across the board with how we do this. And of course, there are certain formats, certain approaches, whatever that we know are a shoe in,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not everybody is cool being on camera. All right, we got to take video out the strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe people are, because I'm also a huge proponent of bringing some personal aspects
Mm-hmm.
along the journey. Again, it's that emotional connection. I worked with a brand where they were in an incredibly saturated market, right? Everybody doing what they do. But the reason this brand was able to stand out is because people were riding for the founder.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
were on her journey. They wanted and were so committed to seeing her win.
Right.
It was a key differentiator.
Right.
But you have people who are like, I'm a behind the scenes kind of
Yeah.
girl. I don't want to be in there. So that's where that next assessment is okay, here are all of the options.
Mm-hmm.
What is your comfort level? What are you willing to do? What do you have the resources and team to do? What can we really do? And then once I have that, I'm able to put together a comprehensive strategy, whether it's digital, whether it's traditional, whether it's in person, all of these different aspects of a marketing strategy to really get those results we're looking for.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
love that. And do you guys like, because often what I've noticed is that people want results really fast, right?
Mm,
And it takes a minute to really like one, do the assessment, agree on where you guys are gonna kind of like, all right, we're gonna start here,
yeah.
build assets, just get a lot of things in a can so that you're not start, stop, start, stop.
Right. Right.
Do you tell your clients, all right, you have to give me X amount of time to really see some sort of transition, a difference,
Yeah.
results?
So I feel like with my consulting clients, they are a little easier to
Yeah.
have that conversation with. They know it's not going to be tomorrow,
Yeah.
where it's like all of a sudden I have a million followers. How am I?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The consult. So working with these small and mid-sized businesses with my agency, that is an easier conversation.
Hmm.
I am going into PNC Bank in
Uh-huh.
Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
And their chief marketing officer said, we just gave LinkedIn $1.5 million
Hmm.
and we didn't get X amount in sales. Fix it. Like, so those conversations are a little more different.
Yeah.
That's when I have to go in and we have to look at their strategy. And because to your point, because people are looking for results like the finances and hitting that ROI immediately, they're doing like all lead generation efforts, not understanding that there is a brand to
Hmm.
demand pipeline that you kind of have to go with to really see those results. You can't hop out the gate and say, buy my thing.
That's
People
right.
have to know you, they have to feel you, they have to understand why you're different from everybody else in the market, and then they buy. And
Right.
so when those things happen, so the sales team are usually the ones that have those conversations with those higher ups. And that's when I get an email and they're like, Regina, come help us explain to them why this cannot happen. And so we have a number of different tools. Like that stat I gave you came from a research institute that we have in-house at LinkedIn, and that's all they do. All they do is do research on B2B and B2C marketing, trends, how people respond, all of that kind of stuff, so that we are equipped and armed with all of this information and these best practices, how they can optimize ideas. We can brainstorm together. So I'm the one that goes in and has those conversations. So I'm talking people off the ledge. I am giving them some knowledge, and then we come up with a strategy that encompasses this entire plan so that nobody is expecting results the next week.
Got it. So you're the fixer.
I am that. So my sales teams call me the closer, because if a deal is teeter-tottering, they like, what you doing next week?
Got it. Got it.
So that's why you constantly see me zipping all over the country. Those are the conversations that I'm having. I'm fixing it and closing the deals.
Closing it. All right. Okay. This is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have another question. I have a million questions, but I want to make sure we get to the key things. Often, I think in today's time, at least in my experience, I feel like digital and marketing are kind of like interchangeable at this point. Yeah. It's like, what is marketing without digital, right? Like
at this point, there is no marketing without digital.
Right. So I was going to ask you, do you separate the two, or do you kind of like when you're offering it within Red perspective or in your, in your 9 to 5?
Yeah.
Is it kind of like one thing in your world today?
Yeah, I feel like to some degree it is synonymous, right? Because even if you're doing things offline, you have to talk about it online for people who weren't in the room to know about it. And so what I do offer with Red Perspective is, what's your priority? Would you rather be out there touching the people, having these one-on-ones? We're still going to talk about it on social, but that's more secondary. And that comes to that comfort level too, right? It's like, are you somebody that's going to do these 100 reels I'm asking you for this content repository? Or are you going to do 50 panels and keynotes and fireside chats, and we'll work with that content for your social strategy? So it's asking people their preference, because again, if I want that authentic feel, it needs to be what they want to do. But similarly with my LinkedIn clients, what we've seen, especially since the pandemic, we've seen that people do want to know the people behind these brands. Brands need to be humanized a lot more now, because they're doing business with brands that they have the emotional connection with, that they share values with. If they like the people, they're more likely to buy the thing. And so a part of the strategies that I'm offering to them as well does include thought leadership. You need to be out there. You need to be sharing your perspective on things that's changing within the industry. It helps build trust with the brand and make people more likely to do it. So that's where the offline comes into the online with those strategies as well. And what I will say is, probably from January till about mid-April was when I saw a shift. Almost every client presentation I had was about thought leadership and how they could integrate it into their strategy, how we could choose which execs or subject matter experts to put forward, what it looks like. So people are understanding that the offline, what you're doing, where you're speaking, what podcasts are you featured on, et cetera. They really are starting to see the value of it. But again, anything you do offline is coming back online anyway. So
that's right.
It's integrated.
Yeah. And especially to your point in like humanizing the brand, it's like, it's really hard to find market segments that aren't saturated, right? So it's like, how do you stand out? How do you position?
None of us are inventing the wheel right now.
Right. Yes.
And yeah, I think understanding that differentiator early on is so important. And that's why when you were saying we can't let marketing dictate the vision, you have to come to it with your vision. That's why it's important, because your vision or your brand story or whatever it is has to be what makes it different from everybody else doing it. How many boutique marketing agencies are there out there? There are a million out there, but there's only one Regina.
That's right.
Like, this sauce can't be duplicated. So that this is my perspective. So that's why it's called Red Perspective. This is the only place that you are going to get this kind of guidance with this kind of focus to
Mhm.
get you those, those sales or that brand impact that you're reaching for.
Yes. No, I love that.
Yeah.
And then for someone that is interested in being in marketing, right?
Mhm.
From your perspective, though, like in the world that you touch on, because again, marketing is broad.
Mhm.
Um, what do you feel like from a character or attribute perspective? Like, what do you feel like are some of the things that that person should or needs to embody?
Yeah. That's so interesting. I feel like you have to be analytical.
Mm-hmm.
Always. That was one of the main reasons I decided to pivot and focus on digital marketing because numbers don't lie,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you also need to be able to look at those numbers, make decisions. You need to be able to look at those numbers and tell a story. You need to be able to use those a particular way. So I think analytical skills are really important.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you need to have a degree of creativity, even though I don't consider myself creative at all.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people all the time, I'm not an ideator.
Uh-huh.
I am an idea midwife. I will bring your vision to life, but you
Yeah.
got to come to me with it.
Uh-huh. Right.
I'm not building anything from scratch, baby. But if you come to me with just a little bit, we can blow this out the
Yeah.
water.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, but I do think even with that, you have to be creative. Like when we were talking about people's comfort level, if I give them six options and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, yeah, one or two, we have to build a full strategy over you only doing these two things. All
Right.
right, got to get creative. So I think there's because creativity is also a broad term, and I think people look at it a very particular way. But I think there's a degree of mental creativity that you have to be a marketer. I
Mm-hmm.
also think there has to be a hunger for learning. Marketing is an industry that is
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
constantly changing. And so you have to be somebody who is staying abreast of the shifts, especially if you want to be able to offer the best services to the people you're working with. You need to be able to fully understand what's going on, what's important, what's moving the needle at the moment.
Yeah.
And then, just I'm still struggling with this at my big old age, you really do have to be a people person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would much rather be
Mm-hmm.
on my couch with my dog watching terrible television.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love that actually. But I go in these rooms,
Uh-huh.
turn it on, thank to my dad for the charisma. It's oozing. The people are putty in my hands. It's great. And then I go and face plant.
Uh-huh.
So you even need to have it naturally
Yes.
or, be able to be this people person, control the room,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to be articulate.
Yeah.
You can have the best ideas in the world, but if you can't articulate them, A, in a way that's clear for people to understand, but also B, in a way for people to just believe it,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it's going to land. I remember early in my LinkedIn career, I had a presentation with this huge bank
Mm-hmm.
in, it's actually TD Bank, which is
Uh-huh.
Toronto Dominion Bank, right? So I
Oh,
had
I
this
never
huge
knew that.
present. No, yeah, TD is Toronto based.
I never knew.
So I had this huge presentation with TD Bank. It was like
Uh-huh.
my first month because my
Mhm.
manager played no games. 2 weeks in, I was in my first workshop, and I was like, "What's happening?" But I'm a trial by fire girl, so I was like, you know
Yep.
what? Yeah, let's do more. But I was in Toronto for this huge presentation with TD Bank, and they asked me something that I clearly had not read up on yet. Shari, you would have thought I had known about that LinkedIn product my entire career. Okay, sold it. When it was over, my manager said, "You know that was wrong, right?" I was like, "Probably." Yes, I was pretty sure. He said, "But you sold it." I said, "That's what I do." So I think there's a way you have to be able to present yourself in a particular way to, for people to understand what you're saying and also believe it,
Yeah.
even if you are just going off the fly like I tend
Right.
to do.
That's a gift. That is a gift right there. I
I
don't
am
know
grateful
that
for
I
it.
have that gift for sure because I am like, if I don't know something, I'm big.
Frozen?
I always say, I know what I don't know. So I will
Yeah.
be honest and tell you, but the like I don't know if I have that ability. I
Yeah,
don't
no, if it's important, I'll say, you know what, that's a really, I was
yeah.
in Philly on Tuesday. I
Uh-huh.
had a presentation with Vanguard, which is
Uh-huh.
another financial services institution. And this lady asked me something, girl, no clue. I said, you know what, that's a very interesting question.
I'll get
I'll
back.
give it our insights team and I can get you some follow-up. So
That's
like if it's something that I think will move the needle, then
yeah.
I will be
Yeah.
very clear that I don't know. But if you just want some fluffy words, oh, I can give you fluff.
Yeah.
All day.
Yes, and I actually think something you touched on, I think it was like one of the last
hmm
kind of like characteristics is being able to articulate your idea, right? In a
Yeah,
way that the client receives it. Because I always
has
say,
to be clear and understandable.
yes, and you have to know
Mhm.
your audience, right? Because what works for one doesn't work for the other.
100%.
And it could, like you said, it could be the greatest idea in the world, but if it comes by the wrong messenger,
Or
it
message the wrong way
is the wrong way, it goes
yeah,
away. And then you'll see them doing the same thing, but just because
because
somebody,
somebody said it better.
yep,
Yeah,
yep. So that is
100%.
key. You probably should do some side workshops on knowing your audience. I think what I think
Sorry, I
happens,
don't need another job.
listen,
I have so many jobs.
my mind is always going about what is missing
I know.
in this place.
And I am all about filling the gaps, right? Like that was the
Yes.
whole reason I started Red Perspective. But I don't, but maybe let's talk about 2026,
Okay.
okay?
All right. All
Because
right.
I'm working on something else. Like I don't need another job.
Okay. Yes. But it's needed. You know what I mean?
It
Because
is. No.
again, there's so many conversations that are so high level. Even when I'm on
Yeah.
tables, it's very high level, but I'm like, we need
How do
to
we
like
get to the nit
drill
gritty?
into some of these things, like
Yeah.
one at a time, like a workshop just on delivering ideas. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like, oh,
Clear communication.
marketing. Yeah.
Mhm.
So but yeah, so that is I think those were amazing like an amazing list of characteristics, attributes
Mhm.
that people should embody coming into this field or being in the field and excelling in it.
Yeah.
Right? I also want to talk to you about the pivots that you've made because you've
Oh,
made
so many. Oh, so many.
and you've touched on it in the beginning.
Mhm.
It's important because a lot of times, we as women, we stay places too long,
Yeah.
right? Um, and and then I'm big on getting all of what you want to do out, right? I think
Yeah.
that's happiness. I think that's part of joy. I think that's part of just the fulfillment of life. And
Yeah.
so I think and your career has a lot to do with that. We spend a lot of the portion of our lives within our career. So
Yeah.
what what encouraged you to make the pivots that you did? And what were some of the learnings? What were some of the do's, the don'ts in that
Yeah.
space? I just want to talk about that a little bit more because, I feel like
Yeah,
you don't
for
have
sure.
a conversation around that.
I think so. It's twofold.
Mhm.
One was a lot what you said about the fulfillment. So, where your fulfillment comes from, like getting the things done. Like, I came here because I wanted to accomplish this, and it could be mess to the left, mess to the right. I'm going to accomplish this, and then I'm going to dip. I
Mhm.
think for me, it is about how I am feeling. And that's why feeling is so integrated in the way that I work.
Mhm.
If I'm waking up in the morning and I'm like, oh, not this again. Oh, baby, it's almost time. We're creeping up on it.
Right.
And I know that that's not an ideal state. Like it's very idealistic. It's not a realistic state of mind, but I have always lived, this is going to sound nuts. I have always lived my life outside of reality. I have always lived in Regina land, and everybody else, you got to roll with it. And I can look crazy and sound crazy, but Regina land is great.
Yep.
It's been holding me down, you know.
Uh-huh.
So it's not a realistic perspective, but it is how I have always been. And so staying very true to that is what I have never second guessed any decision that I've made to pivot. I
Mhm.
think the other side of it for me has been Kindle.
Mhm.
I do not know adult life without being a parent. Like, had her fresh out of college. So my entire life has always been what do I look like to her?
Right. Right.
What is she seeing?
Yeah.
What would I not want her to deal with? How do I not want her to ever feel? And if I am not embodying and actually living that, what am I teaching her? I am a very, we put up with nothing. I have always brought her up with, we put up with nothing. So what do I look like putting up? Nah, we don't put up over here. So it really is twofold. It is, I have to be comfortable where I am or I will dip. It has been proven. I have to be comfortable with what I'm doing or I will shift,
Mhm.
prove it again. And I have to actually be embodying and fully exhibiting the way I want my daughter to live because I am who she's watching.
Right. That's strong.
Yeah.
That really is strong. And I think whether it it is I feel like I'm not a mother, so I don't
Mhm.
understand that completely, but I do understand that from a perspective of just showing up for my sisters,
Yeah. There are
and
people watching.
yeah, there are people watching. And then when you think about how short this life is, you're like, am I really enjoying these moments? You know what I
Where's
mean?
the fulfillment?
Where's
Where is the joy? And if you don't feel that,
yeah,
it's time to go. And, to that point, too, sometimes you don't even realize
yeah,
all the people that are watching, all of the people
yeah,
that you're impacting. And I think that's so special when you are just living your way, right? You're just doing your thing. And then you get a message.
yeah,
Or you have no idea how this inspired me or this touched me. And so that's why I think it's so important to like understand what's best for you. That's going to be different for everybody, right?
yeah,
But understanding what's best for you and then just standing 10 toes down in that, no matter what,
yeah,
you are doing so much
yeah.
for so many people. Like even with her, it was, there were some days
Mhm.
in this journey of parenthood of mine where I was like, come get her. She
Right,
gonna be on the street. Somebody gotta come pick her up. She
right.
gotta get out of here. And then it was like one day a light switch went up and I was like, is this me?
Yeah,
Like I would hear her having conversations. We're speaking about, she just finished her freshman year of college. She had to navigate that, but we're having conversations about her approach and how she's mapping things and why this and why that. And I was like, oh, she was
yeah,
listening. Oh, she was paying attention. So I think that's a huge part of why I live the way I live because I want her to live a certain way and she can't do it if she doesn't see it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. And I also one thing that I've noticed about myself, right, with just pivoting is feeling stagnant. Like
Hmm.
I'm addicted to learning or just doing, and I'm with you, like that trial by fire kind of
Yeah,
person.
put me in.
Jump in, but I have to have the opportunities to jump in. And when I feel like those opportunities are kind of like exhausted,
Yep.
like, all right, what's new? I gotta figure something else
But
out.
that comes to that fulfillment piece, right? Like for you, the learning, the experiencing the new things or whatever, that's what fulfills you and
Yeah,
that's what makes you happy. So whatever that looks like, as soon as that stops, you're
yeah,
like, oh, okay, what's
yep,
next?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I feel like we talked about so much, and I really
Mhm.
think that the viewers are going to get a you get some real insight into marketing from your perspective, and also just like how it could look at somewhere like LinkedIn,
Yeah.
because again, I'm sure there are millions of marketing roles in that space that cover
Yeah.
different areas, but this is
Because I'm not even on the marketing team.
right, right.
Like that marketing does something else. We recently went through like huge layoffs.
Oh,
And
really?
there were, yeah, about 2, 3 weeks ago, they laid off like 1,200 people, like 7% of our workforce.
Wow.
And it was insane. And so with
Uh-huh.
it, there were some team restructures and shifts or whatever. And my team got shifted to a newly developed org. And we had our first global meeting with all the new pieces. There
Right.
was a VIP marketing team in there.
Mhm.
Sharon, one of the girls, I didn't even know she still worked there. The other guy, I sat next to him the whole meeting. At the end, he was like, what's your name? Didn't even know what that part of marketing did. So
Yeah,
even within one company,
yeah,
marketing can look so different.
right. That's
Yeah.
and And so I think with all of this, right, I think this is like a perfect segue just to end our interview. What what do you feel? So I always say that again, representation is important, right? So
Mhm.
being able to show people that these positions exist and women that they can actually relate to,
Yeah.
conquering these roles, because a lot of times you just don't know. You don't
Yeah.
know that these things exist. I always say, starting out in the business, I had no idea what that music business looked like until I walked into that office, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
know. So I think it's really important to speak out about that. Um, but I guess ending it off, like if there was any advice that you would give to women looking to get into this field, um, what would that be?
Yeah, I think to your point, it's so broad and there are so many different types of opportunities. You know, me, as y'all heard, I'm an assessment girl. First start,
Mhm.
what makes you happy? What would you be interesting? What, if it's marketing, what aspect of marketing really calls your name? And again, wide breadth, right? We were talking about the digital versus non-digital. If you want to be real, like experiential,
Mhm. Mhm.
people look what you know what you all are doing, right? That experiential marketing also so fulfilling and so incredibly fun. So it's like thinking about all of these different areas of marketing, and I know that some people don't know that off top, right?
Yep.
Network. You can reach out to anybody. You can reach out to me. You can find people to chat with you and have that conversation. I think I'm really, a lot of people send me their former students or whatever. So I have a lot of these kinds of conversations with young people who are either still in college, fresh out of college. And I'm like, well, what do you like? What do you want to do? Okay, well, these are the areas of marketing that can be really beneficial for you. So
Right.
I would definitely say do the research, whether it's on your own or through a network, to kind of see where that alignment is. That's what my friend Holly calls it, your jam.
Mhm.
Where does what you're interested in, what lights you up, what can you do where it doesn't feel like, oh boy, here we go? And then where are the opportunities in finding that alignment in your jam? I think the other thing is to test it. Like we said, we are trial by fire people. Internships, if you know somebody doing it, ask them if you can shadow for a little bit. You need to feel it, you
Yep.
need to be in it. Um, and really understand if that's your thing. Like my very first pivot was 2 weeks into college. I was an international business major.
Mhm.
I was going to get that international business degree, get a law degree, and I was going to be a sports agent because all the players were coming from Europe. So
Right.
I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Two
Yep.
weeks in, I went to my advisor. I said, babes, this isn't working. I need the fun part of business because I'm going to lose it in that finance class. And so
Right.
my very first pivot, I was 17 years old.
Uh-huh.
The advisor's office like changed me, please. So I think getting in it, but if I hadn't gone, I wouldn't have known
Right.
that it wasn't for me. So I do think that like experience, feel it, do it, etc. And then I think just making sure that as you're moving your way through it, whether it's marketing or any other kind of industry, just stay so firmly grounded in, is this working for me? Because
Yeah.
it doesn't have to always. It could be working for you on Monday and by Wednesday you feel differently. But sit with that and never ignore that. Make sure it's not a whim, explore it, make sure that's how you really feel, but never absolutely ignore it because you feel like that's where you should be
Right.
or it would look better to stay here or whatever. Just stay so grounded and true to how you're feeling and how where your fulfillment is coming from, where your joy is coming from. In Regina worlds, that's honestly the only way to live.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Regina, for joining us and being the part, being the first interview.
Oh, look at me, inaugural guest.
I love it. Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
All right. See you later.